Friday has made its way back to us again, and we are ever so grateful. Welcome to Racing Today, your one-stop shop for all your equestrian needs. We are proud to say that we keep the spirit of horse racing alive and well. I'm Benny Langa, and I'll be joining you as we pace around the who's who of the sport of kings and all other royals who are part of this majestic industry we've come to love. I'm joined by our OG and journo on a horse, Mr. Andrew Bonn, on this precursor to the Heritage Day celebrations in Mzansi next week. We thought it apt to celebrate one of the daughters of Mzansi who's making big strides at home and abroad. Now, before we jump into it, let me welcome my trusted friend, Mr. Bonn. A warm welcome to you, Andrew. Welcome back to Racing Today.
Thank you, Benny. Well, it's right. Nice to see you twice in one
Yes,
week
indeed.
because obviously Heritage Day is coming up on
Yes.
Monday, and it was always nice to package some of the memorable moments. But let's not let on too much about
Yeah.
what's in the show on Monday.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we are leading up to Heritage Day. It is Heritage Month, and that's how we like to celebrate things here in South Africa. We'll take a day and stretch it out into a month in typical Mzansi style. But the story that we're going to talk about, these two athletes that we're going to talk about today, are near and dear to your heart. You've been working very closely on this particular story, and we think it's very important to communicate to our audience. It is a proudly South African story about Jessica George and Wrap Up.
It is, and I get goosebumps when I think about it. I was actually in Mike de Kock's office this morning at Rijkersfontein, and it seems like yesterday that Gray's Inn was standing in his box 3 or 4 doors down from his office. And, he's traveled the world. He's been to Hong Kong. He's been to Dubai. He's been to Australia. He's got such an international pedigree.
Yeah.
And as you will see in the insert a little bit later, Jessica George alludes to the fact that Rapper is so geared for this international journey because we were discussing it earlier on in the week about the reality of South African horses making their name and their presence felt all around the world, because that's what gives South African racing respect.
Yeah.
And that's what we desperately need.
Well, let's talk about Jessica George first and foremost. I mean, this feat that we're going to unpack here today is a feat that hasn't been accomplished by too many, not too many in recent times. This young lady is going to be flying the flag, the South African flag, proudly in Paris not too long from now. But I want to talk about what it takes to actually get there, what it takes to be what she is. Now, let's start first with the distinction between eventer and show jumper, because I got it all wrong. I wanted to refer to her as a show jumper, but she actually is a competition eventer. What is that?
Well, basically, she's a triathlete on a horse.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean, think of the decathlon. Think of the greatness of Daley Thompson.
Yes.
Doing the pole vault, the long jump, the high jump, the 800, the 400, etc., etc., etc. All these different events that make up the decathlon. Eventing is the sport of dressage, which is discipline.
Yeah.
Show jumping, which is agility and discipline.
Sure.
And then eventing, which is bravery, courage, stamina.
Yeah.
So if you can do all 3 of those disciplines, you can very easily get to the Olympics.
Yeah.
But you've got to have the right horse. You've got to have the right dedication. You've got to have the right bank balance. And that might not come from your father or your mother or your family. You might be so popular and so hardworking that some potential sponsor sees the value. And quite often, it's these sponsors that are not looking for massive mileage. They do it because they genuinely love the endeavor of being an Olympian. Because we all know that the Olympics is an amateur sport.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, well, obviously, if you get an Olympic gold, you're going to become a very
different story,
quickly professional.
Yeah.
But it's all-encompassing, and I am filled with admiration for Jessica. And it's a full circle, almost completing, hopefully with the protocols lying firmly in the corner of the European Union at the moment. If we get the right answer, the horse will be able to go directly into the EU, which obviously makes it a lot easier and less onerous, other than the horses that have traveled historically.
We've spoken about horses prior to this many times on the show, specifically about thoroughbred racehorses having a sort of a second bite at the cherry, if you will, after their careers on the course. We don't take it for granted that we have our OGs who give us so much information, but let's get back into that conversation, specifically about Wrap Up. Wrap Up had a somewhat average or mediocre career as a racehorse.
You're being too kind.
Well, I'm on
He was
national TV.
absolutely useless as a racehorse.
But I mean, how do you take a horse like that and then think to put it into this kind of, well, let's call it what it is, very, very demanding career post an average career as a racehorse?
I'll give you a good example. My brother-in-law is currently 6'7".
Yeah.
When he matriculated, he was probably around about 5'8".
Wow. Okay. That's
He was a
interesting.
picky. He was a really small man, and he
Yeah.
got bullied. But he grew so late. Now, this horse, Wrap Up,
Yeah.
he's a son of Grazing. He stands 17 hands.
Sure.
So that's 17 multiplied by 4 inches,
Yeah.
because obviously a hand is
Yeah.
4 inches. And I think when he finished racing, he probably raced about 7 or 8 times. He was absolutely useless.
Yeah.
He hadn't grown into that frame. But right now, he is so agile.
Yeah.
He is so disciplined. He is so brave. He is the quintessential eventing horse. And I'm just so happy for Jessica and for the gentleman that owned Wrap Up prior to Jessica having purchased him with her father, Quinton. This guy, Douglas Welsh, went to the World Equestrian Games back in 2010 with one of South Africa's greatest eventers ever, the incomparable Graham Wynne. He rode a half thoroughbred called Zorba, who was out of a Colonel Pickering mare. So there always seems to be this Oppenheimer connection and the strong genes that come through international acquisitions.
Yeah.
Makara was another one. But the point is that Wrap Up is the most talented eventer that I have ever seen in the flesh.
That's saying something. If Andrew Bond
phenomenal.
is saying it, that's saying something. But I'm also interested in Jessica George, the athlete herself, this young Gen Zer, as people might refer to her. I mean, she's young, but competing at the highest level, doing something that she's truly passionate about, and doing it really, really well. I mean, you don't get a call up to that level. I mean, we're going to see her in Paris next year. Tell me more about Jessica George and her passion for the sport.
Well, she's 75% of the way.
Yeah.
She's had 3 qualifying events, and they've all counted. They've all had FEI judges.
Yeah.
Now, it's very expensive to bring FEI judges to South Africa, and her final qualifier will be at Oak Springs in the first week of November. Now, Oak Springs is on the outskirts of Mooi River.
Yeah.
You go past quite a few. I'm just trying to think of the place. I think it's called Sierra Ranch. You go out that way towards Greytown. And it's owned by an absolutely fabulous family, and they do a really incredible job in preparing this ground. So it's got this dressage arena, it's got a show jumping arena, and then you go out into the country.
Yeah.
And Wrap Up has to qualify in the long course.
Yeah.
He's got 3 short courses
And
behind
that's
his.
the 4th in the series. But you're a man who doesn't mince their words. I mean, what are her chances here, realistically, with this horse?
Look, she's the only 4-star contestant on that particular day. There's not another. There were 2 other 4-star horses, but both of them got injured during the course of the year. Because that's another thing. You might have the horse, but it's flesh and blood.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you many, many great horses. Horse Chestnut was on his way to Dubai for a date with Destiny with Dubai Millennium in the year 2000.
Yes.
And subsequent to having won the Triple Crown in South Africa, he got injured. And then he got exported to America. The quarantine period did him proud because he recuperated. But in his very first start in America at Gulfstream Park, the Broward Handicap, he won with incredible ease. He smashed him.
That's what South Africans do, Andrew. We're going to take a short break. But, I mean, in celebrating Heritage Month, I mean, that's kind of what we do. Give us half a chance on any stage, we'll show you what we do. But stick around. I still want to unpack so much more about Jessica George and Wrap Up. Well, I'm certainly fascinated by the story and would love to hear more. Now, after the break, we are invited to indulge and hear the full story of Jessica George and, of course, Wrap Up through the eyes of our OG here, Mr. Andrew Bond. See you after this short one. Welcome back to Racing Today, where the thoroughbred is the star of the show. Let's not forget the humans that balance the equation of the course. Now, we've been talking about a wonderful story of a duo that is set to take the world by storm. Andrew Bond and I are talking about a horse called Wrap Up and an eventer extraordinaire called Jessica George. Andrew, let's take a look at the adventures of these two and catch up just after this.
Can you imagine entering the Palace of Versailles on a horse? Perhaps it was intended that way, but for young Jessica George and a horse called Wrap Up, himself a son of Gray's Inn, that distinct possibility is a reality now. He has one more qualifying event in the beginning of November at Oak Springs, a course that he has already completed in the short format, and he hopefully will enter the realm of South African competitors at the Olympic Games. There have been very few of them, but he is the most qualified horse we've seen for many a year. And young Jessica George is hoping that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. The hope is that he will be able to be exported to a country very close to Paris, where he can begin his preparation, which of course has commenced here in South Africa. All his qualifiers have been here, and the team behind him has been unbelievably meticulous. The horse still has to travel the journey. We want to know why you think Wrap Up will handle this journey so well.
So I think Wrap will handle the journey really well. His dad, Gray's Inn, was quite the traveller. His sire's from New Zealand. He was born in South Africa. His mom was from America. And from when he was young, he was travelling to Dubai, Hong Kong. He raced against some of the top racehorses. So travelling was just part of Gray's Inn day-to-day thing.
All the experience in the world in the genes.
Quite literally. I mean, Gray's Inn was an incredible, just researching and learning more about Gray's Inn helps me understand Wrap Up so much. I think Wrap Up is very similar. So Gray's Inn was given the nickname the South African Lion, and I think that's so similar to Wrap Up. He's so brave, and Gray's Inn was referred to as one of the bravest, toughest racehorses in South Africa. And I think he was an incredible, illustration of the kind of potential and talented horses we have in South Africa. And I can see so much of Gray's Inn in Wrap Up.
Well, it's a very, very long way from Oak Springs and Mount Helmsley. You are the girl that may well make South African history by taking South Africa's first son of Gray's into the Olympics.
Very, very exciting. But it's like that quote, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to make this possible. It takes people behind the scenes, people to make this dream, and so many other people's dream as well. It's just getting this one dream together. I'm a Christian by faith, and for me, every time I ride, it's in a way how I worship God, and it's my way of, thanking Him for the body He's given me. And thankfully, I don't get scared, but more, I just love it so much.
Is it just the exuberance of youth that allows you to go and face these monstrous fences?
When you have a really strong connection, bond with your horse, and you know your horse really well. So my mare, I've known her since she was a foal. Rafa, I've been riding for I think about a year now. You build a really strong bond between them, so you can pick up how they're feeling. So I think once you've built that really strong bond with your horse, and you've trained and practiced, then you kind of go out there knowing how your horse is feeling. And your horse makes you brave. Sometimes if I'm a little bit nervous or whatever, I'll just have a Bible verse or something. I just keep on saying it over and over in my head. And sometimes that's just all you need to just keep you going.
Okay, so now this horse, he's been very graciously put in your path by Douglas Welsh because he's my age. He knows that it's unlikely. It's not impossible, but it would have been unlikely for him to go to the Olympics. And he clearly saw the potential and the bond that you had with this horse. When did you get on his back for the first time, and when did you realize that this was, so to speak, a match made in heaven?
January, I first sat on him, I think it was for the first time, and he was just incredible. We've all seen, I'd seen Dougie obviously riding and competing him and producing him, and just thinking that horse is amazing. And I think the first show that I did on him, I just knew this is a completely different animal to anything I've ever competed in my life before. And just that first cross country round, I think is always the first seeing what he's like in the cross country, and we just bonded straight away. And he's actually quite an emotional horse because he's just so brave and so honest. And so everything's on plan. We're now doing our final preps leading up to our last qualifying round in November.
The last time we saw you in action on Wrap Up was at Oak Springs. He was absolutely sublime. You won there, and you've just started getting him back into the routine of doing a bit of dressage. And run us through the plans that will take place between now and when he leaves for Cape Town.
So pretty much every month you want to have about 2 to 3 big atmosphere, a lot of people shows that you can take a horse to, which I'll be taking Wrap Up to, that I can practice my 4-star test, the Olympic test, as well as doing some show jumping rounds, just for him to have the atmosphere, it's the closest thing that he'll get for overseas. And just to fine tune, see what we need to work on, everything building towards getting it right on the day.
Right, this particular scenario is not cast in stone, but there's very strong talk and possibility that the event at Oak Springs will be live streamed and that we will have sponsors on board, because it's not a cheap exercise to get these international judges to come out and judge a 4-star where you, to all intents and purposes, are the only competitor.
Yeah, so Wrap Up and I we're the only combination in South Africa that are qualified for 4-star long format. And for an Olympic qualifier, you have to have all overseas officials come out, which is a huge thing. And they will rate you just like all the other overseas competitors, which is amazing. But it's a very expensive exercise and procedure. So for it to be live streamed, would be an incredible opportunity for sponsors, for all of that. It's a massive thing. Final Olympic qualifier before the Olympic Games. So it is a huge thing.
Now, that's what I call tenacity, faith, and good old hard work. That's what it all looks like to me. The synchronicity in the story is out of this world, Andrew. And I'm so glad that you could actually capture that for us. But in one of the frames there, you could see that she had been injured. And that's a huge horse. Pardon my language, but it's a massive horse. What does that say about the tenacity and grit that it takes to participate in this sport?
It was a fantastic life lesson for her, because she was competing 2 separate horses in the same event. So she got off one and got onto the next.
Unbelievable.
And the one horse was just a little bit iffy in her first 4-star. And that fractional second of hesitation put her right in the jump. She's really smashed her lip up. She had to be casevaced.
Sure.
So we made a decision right then and there with her father and Douglas that no more competing other horses. Focus on Wrap Up. That's it.
Wrap it up right there. And
wrap it up right there.
I love it. Well, I mean, it speaks to her tenacity, her grit, and I'm sure she's going to make something happen over there in Paris. Now, when we come back, we'll look at just what it takes to get to the Olympics. See you after this short breather. Welcome back to Racing Today, where we are talking all things related to horses, winning spirits, and of course unity. We are with the journo on a horse, Mr. Andrew Bond, and we are unpacking a heartwarming story of a fairly acceptable thoroughbred that has become a grand player in her second wind as an eventer, not a show jumper. Now, Jessica George is looking forward to the Oak Springs long course to secure her place in the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. You've touched on it, but I want to know, where does she stand now? She's done 3 out of 4. How well has she done in those 3 out of 4? And how well does she have to do in this 4th one?
She has to win.
Yeah.
The FER judges have to be there. And she gave Wrap Up a beautiful break for about 5 or 6 weeks after the last Oak Springs event, which was the short course.
Yeah.
Now, she started about 3 or 4 weeks ago on the flat, suppling him up.
Okay.
Show jumping, taking him to specialist show jumping shows, specialist dressage shows. You don't have to teach a horse to go and jump in the country, because once you know he can, what's the point of straining his legs and his ligaments and his muscles?
Speaking of strain, there's a transport aspect as well.
This
is not Paris. We're talking about Paris in France. So I mean, how are we getting this horse there? What are the hurdles? Pardon the pun, that she'll have to jump over.
I told you he's a triathlete. He's going to swim.
That would be interesting to see. But
he's going to get on a 747 or an Airbus or something like that, and he's going to be transported with a huge amount of infrastructural and logistical support. And I know that this labor of love is going to be backed by a company that are very, very close to her in respect of the passion and the commitment and the hard work that she's shown.
Sure.
It's not one of those multinational companies like, that you'll see sponsoring a rugby player,
Yes.
Because if you get in that mainstream kind of exposure, that company is sponsoring for a specific reason.
Yes.
They want the mileage. I get a feeling that there's a company in East London that are unbelievably passionate about the tenacity that she's
Yeah.
shown and the hard work that she's shown, and the chances of her getting there are actually minuscule.
Yeah.
If you break it down, because how many people know about eventing?
Yeah.
There are probably 150 or 200 eventers in South Africa.
Are you serious?
I'm one of them.
Yeah.
But I have no delusions of grandeur.
Well, that brings me to my next question. I mean, how do we then support this young lady? You've put together that package. I'm sure there are people at home wondering, how do we get behind this event? How do we get behind her and this wonderful horse? How do we make sure that our presence is felt for future events? Because we want to make sure it's live streamed. Where do we catch it? How do we support it?
Yeah, look, there are a couple of irons in the fire. One particularly with a group that have been based in the Eastern Cape for many, many years, and they are national, and they're a unique kind of company. And I know that the possibility is extremely strong that they will get the rights to live stream the event in Oak Springs, and that their name will be carried around the world. But having said that, the ethos in that company has always been to fly under the radar, let the hard work and let the relationships that are forged in that company determine exactly how successful the company will be by people continually coming back. Because let's face it, word of mouth, there is nothing more powerful than that.
Absolutely, and nothing more powerful than racing today. So I thank you, Mr. Bond, for bringing us the story. We are absolutely going to get behind this young lady and this wonderful thoroughbred. We think and we know. I'm very optimistic on this show. We know she's going to do well.
We do too.
And she's going to go to Paris and represent us with the distinction that we know that she will. So thank you for bringing us the story. Thank you to you tuning in at home. Make sure you support Jessica George as much as you possibly can. Now, well, folks, that's what a beautiful edition of Racing today. I wish you all a beautiful weekend further. Do check us out on our socials as usual and share all your activities with us over the weekend. From myself, Mr. See You at the Races, and of course, the Journo on a Horse, 007 Andrew Bond. We're out for now.